Hearing no new business, I'd like to go into our first track of programming. This is going to be geared towards the VHF UHF. So we'll do this, and it's about a 10 to 15 minute deal, and then we'll do break, and then we've got another program for you. So there's a lot of, and I've got this one. I do want to mention that I don't think I'm the best person to do the presentation, so there's a lot of folks that have been ham probably longer than me. I think I've been licensed 29 years. Hey, I'm sure there's a lot of folks, and I'm sure that you could supplement this. So if you're thinking in the back of your head, hey, there's other things he needs to show, good. Come talk to John. Let's get your name and call sign on there. And we have 2 or 3 different programs that you can sign up for. We got 2 15-minute ones, basically, and then there's a 5-minute one. And I want to thank Rick, N0KYN, for signing up for next month. He's going to do a nice presentation. We call that the lightning round, the 5-minute deal. It's a super easy way to just show off something. He's agreed to do the ham clock and show that. So he's got some cool gear, and he'll talk through that. So anyway, this one's called the Young Hams Toolbox. And I'm going to show you some stuff. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's things that you put together. Now, obviously, I've been licensed for a while, and I've also worked as an electronics guy, so I've got stuff. But the young guys, or if you haven't been doing ham radio a long time, you might not have any of this stuff. It's just to give you an idea. That way you can start thinking about things and building your toolkit. So, what needs to go in your toolkit? And if you guys that have been a hams for a long time, please feel free to comment. This is supposed to be open, right? I don't want to just make it a monologue. Because you're going to see things and go, no, I wouldn't do it that way. And that's okay. You'll figure it out. So, let's see. Let's talk to some of these guys that have been around for a while. What is the number one tool in your ham kit? You think about making antenna connectors and stuff like this. What's your number one tool? Let's hear from these guys in the back table. I bet you can tell me.
Soldering iron.
Soldering iron. Thank you. So, here's the deal. There's a whole bunch of them. You can go to Harbor Freight and get one. You probably already have one, chances are. But you can also spend a little bit more money, and if you look around, you can find something like this. What I have is a soldering iron / hot air station. Now, the big thing about hot air is all of these teeny tiny surface mount things, you got to have hot air to do it. And in order to do hot air, you need to have either solder, besides having surgeon hands, right, and maybe a magnifying glass, you're going to need some things like rosin paste, or you can do the little pins. The pen, you can get the pen now and do it. So where you can coat it, and then you heat it up with this thing. It basically is like a hair dryer, right? And you can crank the knobs up here and get this thing set. So the way it works is it won't start until you cradle it. There's a sensor in there so that you don't leave it laying around your shack and cause a fire. But if you put it in there, it will heat up pretty quick, and you set the temperature and you set the airflow. Right? You don't want to blow components off the board. So you do have to start low and start with a low heat and then work up to it. Now, I realize maybe you don't really want to do SMD work, right? I mean, it's pretty complicated. And if you're not a tradesman, you might not care. But I will say this, it is very, very good for doing your heat shrink tube. Everybody needs to do heat shrink tube, and it's perfect. It's right there. So you pay a few more bucks, and now you got a way to easily do heat shrink tube without burning your fingers off with a torch or a lighter or messing up your soldering gun. So that's really the reason to get that. The other reason you want to have a station like this is, at least at home, is that it comes up to temperature crazy fast. I'm talking like 30 seconds, it's ready. And you can melt through thicker solder if you need to. Since we're talking about that, what else is in the kit? Yes, you've got your solder, right? A nice roll of solder. You can also buy the smaller ones from Harbor Freight. If you look on the welding aisle, they do have these little plastic tubes. They usually come in like a rack mount. I don't know, what are they, a couple bucks, $2, $3. And I've just got several of those just in different places because it's easy. You don't want to have to run out of solder, and you might not feel like you need a big old roll like that. What else will you need? Anybody know what that is?
Solder wick.
Solder wick, yes sir. When you're going to pull stuff off of the board, sometimes you've got to replace something, right? You've got to pull something off of the board, desolder it. You can do the solder suckers and stuff like that. They have a little bulb that pulls the solder away, and some people do that. I don't have one of those, but I do have the wick, so I can get the wick down there in my iron or my hot air gun and get it hot and pull that off. So that's a nice thing to have. And these things are relatively cheap. You can find them all on Amazon. All right, what else? Number 2 thing to have, and you probably already have this, but sometimes people won't do them. Just a good voltmeter. Doesn't have to be awesome. Doesn't have to be a fluke. Flukes are nice for those of us that have them, but man, they're nice. They're very, very accurate. But hey, you can go to Harbor Freight and get one of these. I don't remember how much this one costs. It's probably 15 or 20 bucks. But I like to have an amp clamp, because if you're trying to amp things that are, AC, you can't do that with, probes. That's not going to work. So you want to be able to put this clamp around one of your wires and then turn on your equipment and see how many amps you're pulling. That's going to help you. And I think when John does his, he'll really get into why you would want to do that, right? Because he's going to do a presentation on your power and stuff like that. So, yeah, knowing how much your equipment pulls is a very good thing. Being able to troubleshoot things and see if they're shorted out with the ohm meter is a very good thing. All right. My number 1 rule for these things is make sure that you have a spare fuse and a spare battery, because I promise you will let the smoke out of your fuse. In other words, blow the fuse. It will happen. It happens to the best of us. But you can get, you can get a little bit better stuff. This one is made by Uni-T, UNI-T. It's not as good as a fluke, but it has a little bit more professional features. It's got the amp clamp too. Yes, sir.
How low will it go down to the milliamps? That much current?
Yes, it will, and it does DC and AC. I like this one just because I think it goes out 2 decibels. Right, so it's not going to be as accurate and fine-tuned, as a fluke or something that's more expensive, but it is pretty good. And again, it's for AC or DC, and you've got the amp clamp up top. The nice things to have, of course, when you're working on stuff, is it's sometimes nice to have like a magnetic clip. So if you're working on something, you see the professional HVAC guys and stuff all the time carry those, and they have a magnetic thing on it so they can attach it to the panel or whatever they're working on and keep the meter out of the way, and that way they can keep both of their hands on the probes and hopefully not cross them.
It's nice to have an alligator clip on your negative side.
Yep. And here's the other thing. Speaking of that, what are alligator clips? Well, you got a whole thing of them. Again, you can go to Harbor Freight and get these. They're just the little metal clips, and they've got clips soldered on each side. They've got several colors in a kit. But that helps you to jumper things out if you needed to jumper it out in a pinch, or if you were trying.
It makes a good emergency fuse, too.
Good emergency fuse. You didn't hear that from us. But hey, when you're in the field and you're trying to figure out how to connect something and you don't have a connector, sometimes you can get in there and just splice your cable and then, get over there with an alligator clip. It's also a good way if you've got your meter probes, right? I know this is hard to see, but if you've got your meter probe, you can clip on to the probe, right? And then you've got a hand that's free. You can just tack that onto the ground with a shield, right? At least for one side of it, and that keeps your hands free for just the other side, the positive or the hot side, whatever you're working with. I actually always have one of these. It's not super ham radio, but it's just the outlet tester, so that you can kind of see, hey, maybe something's wired reverse, maybe something's not quite right. It is a nice thing to have, and it's very cheap. Okay. All right, now, talked about this earlier. Heat shrink tube. If you're going to solder wires together, you need to have some way to protect that solder, protect that joint. Everybody has a different way of doing it. The phone guys are really good at doing it because they have to do it and then protect it, because otherwise your phone wouldn't work. I know Ham's done that a bunch.
You guys have those UR2 connectors that are the push-down seal that have the gel in them.
That may be nowadays. Back in my day, we learned how to tape it and take care of it.
Electrical tape. Tape it up.
But these are nice because you can, now the thing to remember, and you will make this mistake, I promise you, because I do it sometimes too. You want to put the heat shrink on before you solder the wire. How do I know? Yeah, you can laugh because you've done it too. Yeah, put it on.
And make sure you put it far enough down so that when the soldering iron hits it, it doesn't shrink around the wire.
Exactly. Get it far enough away from the heat so that you don't prematurely shrink it.
We've all done it.
Yeah, it gets kind of funny, but then you end up having to start over. But it is nice to have a little baggie of those. They come in packs. I like to kind of chop them down to reasonable sizes so that if I lose it, it's not a total loss. But it is nice to have those.
What would you say your total investment for the basics has come up to be?
$79.95. Three easy payments. No, I'm kidding. This is over years. You just collect this stuff over years. But you're talking probably a couple $100 of stuff. But you spread it out over time, right? So you guys that are
Use a hairdryer for heat shrink.
there you go. I like it. If you've got that handy, absolutely. A couple other things, it just seems kind of obvious, I know, but having a Sharpie and an ink pen, because you can write on that heat shrink tube. I don't know if you knew that or not, but it is nice to be able to write on the heat shrink tube what it goes to. You might be dealing with a data cable, right? A lot of these rigs are remoted. So you might have to splice that or extend it or something like that, so you've got a way to do that, and you use your colors and you write, what the cable is. Let's see, I'm just going to list off some things here. Obviously, lots of screwdrivers, scissors. I like to kind of organize these in little plastic bags in case I drop it or in case the thing falls open or whatever. But I've got some small little screwdrivers. I was kind of hoping that, is Pat laying over here? No. So you can always tell every TV engineer, I promise you, they'll walk around with a screwdriver in their pocket. I see Pat with his pocket protector all the time, and I'm like, respect. Working in industry and working in television and media, these guys get these free screwdrivers all the time, and the reason that they'll have them, and they'll be like this, they'll just be like a straight blade, or maybe it'll be one that flips around to Phillips or straight blade, or maybe a magnet or something. Say again? They're called greenies. But yeah, you get these, and what they're for is, tweaking the potentiometers on your equipment, tuning or whatever. It's nice to have that, and for getting the stuff out from underneath your fingernails too, right? Of course.
Always helps to magnetize it too.
Yes. Oh, that's a good one. I forgot about that. That's a good one, Ham. Thank you. It's good to magnetize them. What's your favorite way of getting those magnetized? Do you buy the magnetizer, or you just stick a magnet on it?
Well, in my workshop, I have magnetic strips that I keep tools on, and usually that's where it gets used there, and then put in a tool bag to go someplace.
Gotcha. Just by way of feeding
I get those canvas bags from Harbor Freight or Northern Tool,
Right.
so I can customize a tool pouch or whatever I'm doing. If I'm doing coax connectors or stuff, I've got one of them that's full of adjustment tools and all that good stuff. So it keeps it kind of easy to, and they're different, and they're color coded, so it makes it easy. I picked up this one for that.
That's a different presentation. That's the experienced Ham's toolbox. Because after you get so many, it's obvious that one box is too small, right? You need to break it out into, well, like you said. This
I got
one's
a question on your air solder.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
How hot does it get?
I'll tell you right now. I think it gets up to, I think it is about 4 or 5. Let me.
It's going the other direction.
I know it's over 400. Yep, 480.
Well, let me just put out a little piece of advice.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
If you're soldering coax connectors, you're going to need a heavy-duty 350 to 400 watt soldering iron to do them easily. Don't buy a little 90-watt soldering iron and expect to solder coax connectors.
That's a very good point. The worst soldering irons I have seen for doing the big stuff, I realize that little iron, all the heat gets synced off of it, so it won't get your solder. And you'll know because you won't be able to move the flux. It'll just kind of be a ball. It'll kind of ball up and stuff. So that's going to give you a cold solder joint, so-called cold, meaning that it didn't really do a good job, and you're going to have problems most likely.
I've got a 350-watt soldering iron, and that will not heat. You can't heat sink that off of it.
Right.
So it works better.
Yeah, it's
But
like-
you're going to pay some of those for it too.
Right, you're going to pay some money for something like that.
But if you're doing a lot of connectors,
But
like I have over the years, it's well worth every penny I think.
Exactly. So sometimes these tools, it's good to begin with them, but eventually you learn and you get better tools. And that's the point.
The tip is, the more or less than it's
More thermal mass.
For thermal transfer. Yeah. Okie doke. Well, let's see. One other thing I wanted to point out. Now, obviously, this is just a little plastic box that I have for the actual toolbox. But nowadays, I think those pack-out boxes are nice if you got a little bit extra budget. The canvas bags, like Ham said at Harbor Freight or Northern Tool, those are really good. I actually like to carry around some of these little multi-bit. This one actually has a lighted tip, some little things like that, where you've got extra tips in the end and you can kind of unscrew it, and you've got a lot of stuff there in one. One thing I notice is often overlooked is little spudgers. Harbor Freight sells these things, but some of them are like kind of little hooks. Some of them are straight, and they also sell like a little bit, like a kit like your dentist would use. These are not really dental grade, but they kind of look like the stuff the dentist uses, but they're great for getting in there and pulling, scraping, and stuff like that. Those are awesome for getting pins out of connectors. I mean, very, very helpful.
If you got a family dentist, if you go up and ask him, he'll probably be able to give you a lot of broken tools that you can file down and make do. That's a good source for free.
There you go. And those are real stainless steel. They won't bend. The ones that I got here from Harbor Freight, they will bend. So that's kind of the downside. They're a little cheap. Anyway, lots of assortment. If you want to come up here and look and see what I've got, I'm not going to go through every single thing, but it is good to do to have something. Wire cutters. These are some good ones I found. The Klein Tools. Klein Tools make some great stuff. The Telco guys always use those Klein tools for stripping stuff back and cutting copper wires. You've seen them. They're the chrome tools, the shears. I don't have them because they're in another kit, but they actually make some really good cutters as well, strippers I mean, cutters and strippers that are great for doing things like if you're doing solar and you're putting on connectors. Nice to have. Oh, that's it. Where did you find those? Is that yours? Ha! Joe had one. That's exactly what they look like. They're made by Klein in Chicago, I guess, and they're indispensable. They actually have little strippers on the side too. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. They'll go through anything.
Klein's tools are specifically intended for the electrical and communications industry.
Yeah.
And they're solid, and generally you can get them pretty damn cheap on Amazon.
Yeah, they're
real genuine for part of the price.
For a little number here.
Yeah.
If you can't cut a penny in half, they worth crap.
Oh, that's cool. So I'm assuming you've done that. Awesome. That's a good one. He says if it can't cut a penny, it ain't worth a dirt. All right. Like I said, there's a bunch of things here. One thing I did want to talk about are ratcheting crimpers. This is often overlooked, that you cannot have enough good crimpers that are ratcheting type crimpers. And one of them that I really love is this one. It's made for power poles, and it's got this little thing that sticks out the side that's for the power pole prong, so that when you crimp down on it, and this has kind of changed over time, so you kind of have to watch what some of these electrical trade guys are doing because they know the best, and things change over time. So it used to be if you were coming up, you learn you've got to solder everything. In fact, there's some people that still believe, hey, I prefer to solder everything.
fine. I think because of all the solar panel stuff that come out and these MC4 connectors and all these different things, people needed a better way to install things, and the technology's improved. And these ratcheting, you can hear it. It ratchets down is a great way to make a very good mechanical bond. And when you do that, you strip back the wire just enough to fit in there. I was going to do this, but I may be a little bit short on time here. Power poles are really nice, and the reason I want to talk about this just briefly is because there are inconsistencies. Those little T connectors that you get that are on the back of the radios, if you ever try to connect those together, between manufacturers, those don't always line up, and that stinks. If you're in an emergency situation, that's not cool. You can't plug your radio in. Somebody actually told me, and I meant to look this up, but I had heard that was sort of accepted, power pole was sort of accepted as the standard for emergency communications. I don't know, can somebody confirm that?
In the Aries task book, that's actually one of the, you have to know how to assemble a Nickerson.
Right, so Aries task book, that's what it was.
It's also approved as Motorola and L3 emergency field L3R emergency field replacement.
Okay, and this guy works for Motorola as an engineer, so there you go. That is an official thing. Thank you. Anyway, there's varying things that you can do, but I've seen a lot of people doing this and kind of trying to figure out how do I balance DC and AC in the shack, and we can have conversations about it, but I want to just make you aware of this. Sometimes just seeing it is enough to kind of spur you to go on and do some research on your own, and I do recommend that. So this is just a distribution block for power poles. So if you've got something like this, and this one has 1 input and 8 outputs, and then it's got these blade fuses over here on the side of varying types. So I've got a 40 amp on the main input, I believe, and then there's a couple 30s and a 20 and all that. So you've got fuse protection, and that's a great thing that you can mount in the back of your shack or in your car or whatever, and you can easily, quickly disconnect and connect and troubleshoot with your meter off of that. Now, doing the plugs themselves, I'm going to tell you something that I did, and I made a mistake on the first few that I did. And I thought, man, this is crummy. No, I was doing it right. The whole deal with this is you've got this little metal pin, okay? And it fits inside these plastic interlocking. So you've got the red for positive and the black for negative. And it goes in here a specific way, and it's kind of like it's got like a little claw. And when you push it in, it locks in. So it will not come back out unless you get a little screwdriver in there and push down the little tab that holds it, and then pull it out to repair it or work on it. Okay? Now, the thing is that it's got this little collar where the wire goes. The whole deal to doing this correctly is just don't let the wire stick out. So if you put your stripped piece of wire into this and it's showing copper out the end, it's too long. You've got to trim it off and put it back in there, and it should kind of be flush with it. And then when you crimp down, you can do it once or you can do it twice, it's fine. It crimps in a specific way, and then you just pull on it to make sure that your wire doesn't come out. Now, you may need to practice this a couple times, but once you do it, like I said, and you make sure it's not sticking out the end, you'll be fine. That makes a solid crimp. I think that these crimpers are on Amazon for like about $23 or $25, $26, something like that. There's a blue handled one and an orange handled one. It probably comes out of the same shop in China. These are good enough for occasional, amateur use. If you were doing it professional, I think you probably would want something that was motorized because your hands will get worn out. Okay, now, why is this good? So I've actually got a couple of things hooked up here. You can actually make these, and they're interchangeable, right? So that they made up in the right way. So whenever you connect them, the colors go together. So if you've got two pieces of equipment, you can kind of easily and quickly hook those together. Or if you've got a wire with two connectors on it, it can be an extension very easily. So it's real nice to make those up and have a few little jumpers. As soon as I get a radio, and I'm going to do it on this one if you guys want to come by later on towards the end, I'm going to actually cut this one off of this Yaesu FT400 that I just bought, and I'm going to snip off the T connector, and I'm actually going to crimp power poles. If you want to see that or you want to look at it, come up here afterwards. Last thing, you can find these. Some people may not agree with this, but it comes down to personal preference. I really like this particular MFJ. I've taken this with me on what I would call my own mini DX expedition. But it has the banana jacks in the front and like kind of the screw down terminals. So if you've got spade lugs or whatever, you can kind of throw that in quick and dirty. But it's also got 2 power poles on the back, which is awesome. So my go bag, the one I take with me to Puerto Rico to operate in, it's got everything power pole. So I just come off of here one to my distribution block, and now I can plug in whatever I want to plug in that's 12 volts. So I might have a car charger from my phone or whatever else I might be doing while I operate, and that's what it is.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Have you used one of those on HF?
Yes.
Okay, because I know the first few that MFJ came out with were very
Sure.
noisy on 7 meg.
Okay, that's something to watch out
That's
for.
something you need to, before you buy a transformerless power supply, you need to double check, because a lot of them out there you won't be able to even hear anything on 7 meg.
That is a good point. Most of what I do is on DC, so I run batteries, and then I just run it to the distribution block and then to the radios. And then at night, I charge them, I trickle charge them when I'm not operating, just to keep it topped off. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways to do it, and you talk to guys like Ham, or some of these guys back here, you'll hear a lot of good advice on different ways of doing stuff. So there's a lot of ways to do it. That's pretty much from my end. Any questions here? Okay, so come up afterwards if you want to see this. Oh, I forgot something. Dummy load. Put this in your toolkit, please. Don't key up on the repeater. It's a good thing to have. These are very affordable. I think this thing's like $12 or $20, something like that. It's for 100 watts. I wouldn't get anything lower personally, just in case. But those are really super handy to have. I get most everything I buy nowadays. I do get with N-type connectors, and then I just have adapters, which is the last thing I'm going to leave you with. I like this particular brand of ice cream, Talenti. Seems to be pretty good. Don't eat a lot of it, as you know, Rick. And we had this is an inside joke with these guys. But I take these containers and wash them out, and I put all of my SF239 adapters. You will need adapters, I promise you. And something that Rick said to me one time on the radio got me kind of thinking. Whenever he would use one, he would buy another or two to kind of replace it, to always keep things in stock, because they do break, they can have problems or whatever. So, nice healthy supply. You can get on Amazon and get those in kits, whether they're from SMA or from SF239 or whatever. Cool. That's it from my end. Thanks for the attention. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little snack break, and then we're going to come back in about 8-9 minutes. And we'll do our presentation with John and our HF stuff. Thank you.